Hey guys, it's Madison. A couple weeks ago, I took the new-fangled computer-based TOPIK IBT exam, and in this video, I'm going to be comparing that new computer-based exam to the traditional paper-based TOPIK exam. First, I'm going to break down the general structure of the exams and how they are different, and then I'm going to talk about kind of the more nuanced details of each section and how they're different, and then finally, I'm going to break down my personal experience and which one I prefer and how I think I did on this exam. So first of all, let's talk about the general test format. Both exams have the exact same 3 sections, however, the order of them is different. The traditional paper-based exam has listening immediately followed by writing, then a half-an-hour break, and then reading at the end, whereas the computer-based test has the listening section first, followed by a short 2-minute break, then a reading section, then a 2-minute break, and then the writing section at the end. The lengths of the test are also different, both in the number of questions and the time. The traditional paper-based TOPIK has a 60-minute listening section with 50 questions, a 50-minute writing section with 4 questions, and then a 70-minute writing section with 50 questions again. Whereas in the new one, the listening and reading sections have both been shortened to only 40 questions, and the times have also been shortened to 45 minutes and 55 minutes respectively. The writing section on this computer-based test is also shortened to just 3 questions. One of the little like fill-in-the-blank short answer questions was removed. However, interestingly, it's the exact same time length as the original. So interesting similarity there. Not sure why they did that, but yeah, those are the general differences of the structures of the exams. Both the paper-based version and the computer version have 6 levels of grading, of course. However, the scoring system actually is different for the 2 exams. The traditional paper one is 300 points total, 100 per section, and it's also very clear exactly where the points all come from. For the listening and reading, each question is 2 points, so a total of 100. And the writing section, it says very clearly how many points each question is worth. The first 2 fill-in-the-blank questions are 10 points each. The short essay is 30 and the long essay is 50 points. However, the new computer-based test is a lot more vague and unclear in how it's scored. Instead of being 100 points per section for 300 total, it's 200 points per section, so 600 total. However, it's not as simple as just doubling the score, because if you look at the 6 levels and like what their score ranges are, they're actually quite different. The new version's levels all seem to be significantly lower than the original version if you had just doubled the original, so it's a little bit unclear as to why that is. And also unclear is exactly how the points are scored. Because there's 40 questions in both the listening and reading sections, you can maybe intuit that if they're all weighted equally, it's just 5 points per question. However, on the original paper exam, every single question on the exam literally like is labeled with the fact that it's either 2 points or whatever, however many points they are in the writing section. But on the new test, while you're taking the test, it doesn't say how many points they're worth, which makes you wonder, is that actually still divided equally among the multiple choice, and so 5 points each? I'm not sure. In the writing section, the same thing. It does not say how many points each question is worth, and since they removed one of the short answer questions, you can't really intuit exactly how they are re-weighted for this new system, so it's very kind of vague and unclear how exactly you can earn points and how much each section or each question is worth, which I personally find very frustrating because I like to know exactly how much everything is weighted and how much importance I should put on each question. All right, moving on to the general differences I noticed while taking the test itself. After checking in with the proctor and turning it in my phone, they guided me to my little computer station. I was right next to someone to the left of me, and there's a little aisle, and then someone else about 5 feet away on this side from me as well. So kind of close quarters compared to the paper TOPIK, where they usually give you a bit more space in my experience. But they do have these cardboard cutouts like around your actual little computer station, so you can't see the computers next to you, and it kind of does help you kind of stay in your zone, which I found very helpful. Before you start the exam, there's a couple of pages that you have to click through to make sure you can hear properly and that you agree to all of the things that they ask you to agree to and that kind of stuff. So you kind of click through a few pages on the computer and then wait for the test to begin. The first section, of course, was listening. I will put an example of what the screen looks like during one of the listening questions that they offer in the kind of guide to this new test. As you can see at the top of that, it kind of offers some time information. So you can see how much takey-stick-on or like standby time before the audio starts playing for that question, which is usually like 2 to 3 seconds maybe. Then it says how many times it'll play, and then it says how much time you'll have to answer the questions to just like silence, no audio being played after the question audio is over. As the audio is playing, you could also see like the exact audio track and how far you were in that track. So it was kind of nice to be able to kind of like, you know, see exactly where you are in the audio being played and how much information there was left as it was being spoken. Although honestly, I didn't look at the timers too much just because I didn't have the time to. And that answering time does get longer as the questions progress to the more difficult ones at the end of the test. It starts out being like maybe 6 to 10 seconds if I recall. And then by the end, it's like 22-ish seconds, I believe. Again, I wasn't paying too close of attention because I was mainly focused on actually answering the actual questions of the test. One difference I noticed was that the pictures were actually in color on the screen as opposed to black and white on the paper version of the test. However, the biggest difference in this listening section versus the traditional one is that you cannot look ahead or look back at any previous questions or future questions on the exam, which was, in my opinion, a much more terrible experience in the paper version where you can flip ahead and skim through future questions. If you're like me, you probably hate this fact because I know that for me, I cannot like listen and read well at the same time. My brain only listens to one of those inputs at a time. So in the past, I found it very helpful, especially in the beginning sections where the questions are easier and I don't have to like, spend as much effort to figure out the answers, to quickly answer and then use any remaining like answering time or audio time to quickly skim the future questions of future audios. And by doing that, I was able to kind of know the topics in advance and know generally what I should be looking for, what details to listen for and that kind of stuff. Whereas with this new system, you can only see the questions for this one audio file on the screen at a time. You cannot go forward or back, which for me made it much more difficult of a test. And it actually means you have to kind of skim while you're listening, which again, for me is not a skill that I'm great at. However, for most of the questions, the combination of that like 2 seconds of standby time along with the like reading of the instructions, like listen to the dialogue and answer the questions. You'll hear this only once or you'll hear this twice. Usually that was enough time for me to at least skim the types of questions, and especially in those cases where there are 2 questions. One of them is usually a main idea question or attitude question, and one of them is usually a detail focused question, like which is the correct detailed sentence about the listening. So I really recommend during that like initial take on standby time and the question being read, really make sure you know which question you should answer first, that detailed one, because you'll have to like actually read through and listen for those specific details was on Saturday or Sunday and that kind of stuff. I really recommend like reading that one first and focusing on that one first. It's a lot easier to then go back and make a judgment about what the overall main idea was or overall attitude of the speaker was. Another thing that worked for me during those longer audios that have 2 questions that are read twice is usually during the first reading through of the audio, I would be like reading the answer options for that second detailed question. And then during the second read through of the audio, I would actually like eliminate choices and then ultimately select the correct options for the questions. Also, another big thing to keep in mind for this is that because the screen automatically changes once the audio time is over to the next question, you have to answer those questions during that audio time. Like once that timer hits 0, it's gone. You cannot choose an answer. You can't even guess at that point. It's just too late to even click on any option at all. So make sure that you've clicked in your answers in the given time, or else you'll obviously get no points for that question, even by luck. After the listening section audio is all over, they show you kind of an overview of your answer sheet showing all of the options that you chose for all the questions. You can't actually change any answers or change anything about this at this point. You can just see how many you answered and then like click OK basically. After that, there's a 2-minute break until the reading section, which feels both short and long at the same time because, you're sitting there staring at the timer ticking down to the next part of the test. So you're kind of anxious, but also it's like, whew, you can take a breath without like, frantically skimming through questions or focusing on audio. So yeah, a very long / short 2-minute break and then straight into the reading section. So unlike the listening section where I was kind of frustrated by the limitations of the computer version of the test, I thought the reading version of the computer test is actually very nice in a lot of ways. First of all, they offer a timer in the corner so you can actually pace yourself much better than in a typical paper-based test situation where you only have maybe a clock on the wall, or if you have a watch, you can bring the watch, but then you still have to kind of like, be paying attention to that. And if you're like me and don't have a watch, then you just listen for the 5-minute warning at the very end, and hopefully you have enough time to finish things in that 5 minutes. But I really liked having that timer there so I can kind of like keep a rough eye on it as I went through the test to make sure I was getting through it at a good timely pace. Once again, any pictures or graphs were in color, which was just, a very small difference, but a nice difference. And a really nice feature is that for some of the questions where you're either inserting a phrase or sentence into a paragraph or where you're like sequencing things in order, you actually can visually see it on your screen. So for the things that are inserted into a paragraph, if you click on an answer option, it'll automatically put those words or that sentence into that spot in the paragraph. So you can like see it in its spot and see if it looks right, which I really enjoyed. And even better for the sequencing questions, like you can actually drag and drop and move things around into different orders on your screen, which is just really much more visually easy to think about the logic of the order of things if it's actually in that order versus the paper version where it's just, written all mismatched on paper and you have to like mentally move things around. It's a lot more difficult to mentally process compared to actually physically moving it on a screen. And also for those sequence questions, whereas on paper, all 4 sentences are jumbled up, on the computer version, they actually give you the first sentence, which also decreases the workload that you have to do because you already know the starting point, and then you can just like, logically flow the sentences after that versus figuring out the starting point and every other sentence after that in the paper version. So I really enjoyed those 2 question types on the computerized version compared to their paper version. Unlike the listening section where if there's 2 questions about one audio, you'd see both questions on the screen. For the reading ones, you'd only see 1 question at a time for each passage, even if one passage had 2 or 3 questions. It wasn't really a big deal in my opinion, but it was slightly less nice than being able to just see all the questions at once and kind of pick which one you want to do first. However, you could move freely throughout this test, so you could skip questions and come back to questions if you wanted to. You could, move forward and move back as much as you wanted to throughout the entirety of this test. Unlike the listening section where again, you're kind of locked into your one screen during that one audio file's playing time. After the reading section is writing, and interestingly enough, if you finish the reading section early, you can actually end the test early and just move straight into the writing section, which is an interesting feature. There is still that 2-minute break, so once you hit finish for the reading section, you wait 2 minutes, again, the shortest and longest 2 minutes ever, and then you're straight into the writing section. Now, everything about the writing section was better on the computer. I loved the computerized writing version. Honestly, any timed handwritten essay test ever, whether it's in English or Korean or any language, I just absolutely abhor. They are stupid and pointless in my opinion, and they're not actually a good measure of your writing skills in a language, whether it's your native one or otherwise. I could rant on the soapbox all day about timed essays, but yeah, just having that ability to use a computer was just amazing during this section because that means you can backspace really easily, you can go back to previous sentences and add things or delete things, you can skip forward and work on the conclusion first and then come back to what you're working on earlier. It's just so nice to have the freedom to edit much more easily compared to a handwritten essay, especially on the topic, because the topic uses the wongoji on the paper version, which is the boxes, which have their own special rules as well as to where you put periods and how many numbers you put in one box. It's just kind of all this extra stuff to keep in your mind that's only applicable to this one situation, which is not very realistic to real life, obviously. So it was much nicer to have just this text box where it's so much easier to actually write and edit and change things as you're going. So the writing section, just amazing all around. I mentioned previously that the time given for the paper version of the writing exam and the typing version is actually the exact same, which makes no sense to me because there's 1 fewer question on the computer test and it's faster to type. So I don't know why they give the exact same time. I took the full time on the writing exam and I definitely would not have finished if it was handwritten. So I was very grateful for having the computer and that full time to work, but again, it's not really an equivalent experience, so that was a bit confusing to me as to why they gave the exact same amount of time, but I was not complaining. So that was the breakdown of each section, talking kind of more generally about the test overall and whether I like it more than the paper version. Some pros of the computers compared to the paper version. Number 1, choosing the answer is much faster and much easier to change as well on the computer compared to paper because you just have to click on something versus circle it here and then bubble it in here, and if you want to change it, it's really easy obviously to just click on a different answer, whereas on the topic answer sheet, it's actually bubbled in pen, so not really that changeable. So I much prefer the computer clicking on an option compared to bubbling things in. The test time is overall shorter, which made a lot less brain fatigue, whereas usually it's 3 hours of testing time plus the breaks and stuff, so it's usually a very, very long, mentally draining experience. This is still mentally draining obviously, but much shorter, being just 2.5 hours with almost no breaks. So it's, that half an hour of shortened difference really feels quite big, honestly. Even though the testing time is still 2.5 hours, there's also not that extra huge 30-minute break, so it feels much, much shorter than the traditional topic. And also, since you're not actually having to handwrite things a bunch, you're a lot less drained in that way as well. The test proctoring experience is also much nicer on the computer version just because it's a lot easier for the proctors themselves. They don't have to go around to every single table in a huge lecture hall and hand out test papers and then collect them again and then get them out again and then take them up again. So it's a lot faster in that aspect. You're just clicking go on a computer versus having to be, have this huge handing out and taking that process. I really enjoy the 2-minute breaks versus no break and then 30-minute break in the traditional topic because, I don't know, I feel 2 minutes is enough to be and take a deep breath and just, not think about stuff for a hot second, but it's also not painfully long. The 30-minute break on the traditional one is nice because you can go to the bathroom, but then you're just sitting there for 30 minutes just being anxious about the next part of the exam. So honestly, I feel 30 minutes is too long for me. I like the short, snappy, relaxing, but not too long, painful 2-minute breaks. Now, as for the cons, there are a lot of ways as well where the computer one is not as nice as paper. First of all, even though it's shorter, so there's less overall brain fatigue, because of the font they use on the screen, it's actually really kind of exhausting to read for the course of 2 hours. For some reason, they choose this font that looks really squished down and cramped. And so I found myself squinting the entire time, really trying to focus on reading it because it wasn't just naturally entering my eyes, if that makes any sense. For some reason, I don't know why they chose that font. I think it's so cramped and ugly looking, but whatever, they chose it, and so I had to like struggle through reading it for 2.5 hours. During the listening section, it wasn't too bad, but once I got to reading, and I've been reading it for like an hour at this point, I was just feeling it in my eyes, so I did not really appreciate the font. For the listening section, I already mentioned that it's annoying, obviously, that you cannot switch between questions, which is a huge advantage of paper over computer. But also another thing that you have to consider is that there's a possibility of tech issues for like just you as an individual. For example, the person in front of me during this exam actually raised their hand at the beginning of the listening section saying, I can't hear the audio. It had worked fine during their like testing section before the test, but then suddenly it wasn't working at the beginning. So it seemed like they resolved it, but I'm not sure like what happened to that student's questions. Like, did they start over? Did they just lose those questions entirely? Like, how terrifying, but I don't know what happened, but that is a scary possibility. Even though I liked the 2-minute breaks, if you do have to use the bathroom, it's a big con of this test that there's not really any bathroom breaks in the middle. They gave us like 10 warnings during the pre-waiting time. Like, if you have to go to the bathroom, just go now. If you don't have to go to the bathroom, still go now. You cannot leave in the middle of the test. Don't let yourself be that person who has to go to the bathroom in the middle of the test. So I was really nervous about like, I hope I don't have to go to the bathroom. I went to the bathroom before, of course, but that is the one downside of not having a longer break. So keep that in mind. Make sure you use the bathroom before the test starts. As far as the actual computer stuff is concerned, one negative thing is that the coloring of the correct answer is like a light blue color over white. So it's not like the most obvious thing that you've clicked on the answer. For me, I didn't find it too difficult to see what I had clicked, but the proctor mentioned that in the past people have not really been able to see it well. So he's like, if you can't see like the light blue shading, like just move around and you should see which one you've clicked, which is, not the most convenient thing to do, obviously, but for me, I was able to see the light blue, but I feel like it's just a bad design. They should choose like a more standing out color. And also because whenever you're finished with the reading section, you can just move on at your own pace to the writing section. That meant that for people who finished really early, you could hear their keyboards clacking as they were like typing out their answers to the essays, while I was still trying to like do the reading section. So I was like being really distracted by the girl right next to me who finished like 20 minutes early. I don't know how she read that fast, but she finished super early and was just typing away at the essays. And I was like, that clacking sound is so annoying. So that was a minor annoyance during the reading section. Thankfully, eventually I was able to like tune it out a little bit and focus more on the reading section, but I was, first of all, impressed at how fast she finished, but second of all, like, what the heck is so loud? So if I were you, I would not take off my headphones after the listening section. I would just keep them on because I think that would actually help be a buffer against the noise. I didn't want to like fiddle with everything and like adjust myself during the middle of the exam, so I didn't actually put them back on. But if you're planning on taking this test, I would recommend leaving them on the whole time so you don't hear all these other distracting sounds from other students. And the last way that I think the computer test is inferior to the paper test is that you cannot actually mark on the paper, obviously, because there is no paper. I've always found it helpful to like mark up the test as I was listening or reading, either underlining things or marking X's or O's for possible incorrect or correct answers. But because it's all on the computer, obviously you cannot do that. I found it especially frustrating to answer the listening, like listen for details questions, because I would always like use little X's to show, okay, it's not this one, not this one, not this one, that kind of stuff. But it was really hard to like mentally juggle, like skimming all the options and keeping track of what was being said, and also keeping track of which ones I had eliminated already and which ones were still options that were available for the correct answer. So I found it like, a big mental struggle to like juggle all that in my head at the same time. So I did really miss being able to mark on the actual test paper as I was taking the test. And the final thing that's just mildly frustrating to me is just the overall opaqueness of the grading system. Like I already mentioned, I really wish they just tell us like how many points things are worth, how things are weighted, or how it's just graded in general. Even if it's not like a easy 5 points per question system, at least tell us what the system is, I don't know why it's so unclear, so that's frustrating as well, but what can you do? Hopefully they'll eventually share how it's graded, but for now, we just live in mystery. But yeah, hopefully that was informative for all of you who are planning on taking this test. There are definitely some upsides and downsides. I can't say that one is like 100% better than the other. In my opinion, the writing section is hands down better on the computer, but the listening section is much better on paper for me. So you kind of have to take what's important to you and which one you prefer. If you really like marking on the test as you go, then I would recommend paper. If you absolutely hate handwriting essays like me, maybe the computer version is a better option. Like I said, there's pros and cons to each version. As for my predictions for how I did, I think I did worse than usual on listening, and I usually get around a 90 out of 100 on listening. So I guess my prediction will be around like 168-ish to like 180-ish on listening. I don't even know what to guess because like I said, the scoring is so unclear, but I'm just gonna like double what I think I would have gotten on the regular version and just kind of guess that that's what I got on the new version. So around 168-ish to 180. Also on the reading, I think I did fine, but not my best. So I'm gonna guess kind of a similar range, like 170 to 180-ish on that section as well. For the writing, I think I did much better than in the past because like I said, I had all those advantages of being able to edit and backspace and do that as I wrote. So I think I did much better than in the past. My high score last time was 55, I think. So I'm gonna guess, I don't know, like 70s, 80s of the traditional grading system. So maybe would that be 140 to 160-ish on that section. So those are my rough estimates. Again, I'm not sure how the actual scores translate from one to the other because the actual level breakdown is much lower on the computer version compared to the original one. Maybe I should like lower those expectations even further. I don't really know. We'll see what I get. But yeah, that is my overall thoughts on this experience. I'm probably gonna post an addendum like on the end of this video once I actually receive my results, which is next week, I believe. So stay tuned to the end of the video to hear what I actually got on the exam. I was just on the cusp of level 6 last time and barely made it to level 6, but because I did have the computer for the writing section this time, I'm gonna assume I got level 6 once again and more safely in the level 6 zone. But again, I did feel like I did worse on listening, so who really knows? We'll see once the results come out next week. All right, so it's actually almost a month later now. I'm visiting home for winter vacation, and in the process of being jet lagged and tired, I kind of totally forgot that I even had these results coming out. I was so psyched for like weeks waiting for the results, and then they came to the States, and then I just forgot completely about the topic. So whoopsie, but finally now I am going to log in and see what I got on this exam. All right, I'm on the topic website here, and I'm gonna go ahead and pull up my results. Let's see, here it is. Okay, I got level 6. First of all, big success there. I was a little bit nervous just because it is like a totally different grading system and I didn't know how it works. So wait, what? What? Tell me there's more information than this. What? Hang on. Okay, thank God. Okay. Hold on. Wait, what? What? Okay. I'm so confused. Okay. Okay, hang on, let me explain what's going on here. So for listening, I got a 164 out of 200, which is even lower than I expected. So apparently that whole situation where you can't like skip ahead and skim questions did affect me, or I don't understand the grading system. Oh, interesting. Okay, so my working theory was that because there's 40 questions and 200 points, that maybe each question was 5 points each, but I got a 164. Which means that's not possible. So I'm guessing that maybe they do some sort of like curving situation. Who even knows, honestly? Again, this is a new system. They don't explain it. It's obviously not just 5 points per question because that's been disproven here. For reading, are you ready? I got a 200 out of 200. What? I'm actually shocked. I did not expect that. Like, I thought I did fine. I didn't think I did better than usual. I didn't think I did perfect, but again, maybe they curve it. I don't know, but I'm imagining 200 is a perfect score, right? Surely. And for writing, somehow even more shocking to me than the perfect reading score. My writing score is an 86 out of 200. What? Why is it so low? What? Like, why is it so low? Like, I'm actually wondering, like, did I not submit it correctly? Because I, for the first time ever, finished all the essays and like answered all the parts of the question. Now, to be fair, like my last essay wasn't like the most professionally written piece of thing. I used relatively simple vocabulary for the topic it was talking about. It was like talking about like environmental stuff, and at the time I couldn't think of all like the like high level vocabulary, but I did like write the full essay with like reasoning and decent grammar and stuff. So how did I get an 80? How did I get below 50%? How did I decrease? What? Okay, that's depressing, honestly, but again, I'm just, you know, maybe their standards go really high up because of the typing thing, I guess. Who knows? Again, I really wish I understood how this is graded because what's going on? How is my reading perfect? Am I writing terrible? I already knew my writing is terrible, but like this bad? What? That's so sad. That is so funny how I was most excited about how much more amazing the writing section was on this exam, and then it ended up being by far the most terrible score on my, I mean, I already knew it was gonna be like not a great score, but like this bad? I'm blown away in shock. All right, let me double check the level breakdown again because I'm curious like how safely in level 6 I was, especially since my writing was so terrible. Okay, I'm still much more safely in level 6 than I was last time. Last time I think I was just in it by like 5 points. And this time the cutoff is 412 and I got 450. So I'm definitely much more safely in it this time by far, but wow, I am so shocked in so many ways. Like the reading score is like so amazingly perfect and then the writing score is just so horrifyingly terrible. The listening is like basically what I expected, but wow, what a roller coaster. So that does actually kind of reframe what I think about this exam a little bit. So I was so happy about the writing section, and this is just depressing. I guess they really must just really increase their writing standards, or like their grading standards for the writing, just because you do have the same amount of time and the abilities of a computer. So I guess their standards just got that much higher. I'm guessing it is on a curve, and I'm guessing I just apparently it was not that high on the curve. But even that is kind of weird to me because 86 out of 200. Like, I don't think I have amazing like level 6 writing, but like this test measures from level 3 through level 6. Are you saying that I have like level 4 writing? I don't know about that. This is weird. Again, it makes me wonder, like, did I submit it correctly? But how else would I submit it? I typed it in the box. I don't know, man. I have a lot of questions now. I really, really wish I knew how this stinking test is graded. This is so frustrating, but wow, I really want to be happy about the reading, and I am really happy about the reading perfect score, but it's like so dragged down by that depressing writing. But anyway, I'm just repeating myself now. I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this video up here. Just kidding. No, I'm not. So it's about an hour later. I went downstairs, looked at my test results page once more, and noticed a line of text that I had not noticed before, and that is this line of text that says basically that they do use a like modern scaling system that like matches current testing guidelines and all that stuff. So apparently they do use some sort of scaling system to grade these things. So as for all that ranting and raving earlier in the video, at least now we have an answer as to how it's graded. I will say I did try to go back through the website and look and see, like, was I just dumb? Was I like missing some huge announcement written in clear like Korean on the website saying how they grade it? But I still couldn't find any information, even like going back through knowing how it's graded now, about like how this one uses a scale system and the original one does not. So I think they still should make it a lot more clear on their website. As far as which system I prefer, I actually prefer the standard paper version of the grading system. I know that in theory this new fancy grading system is probably more fair to test takers over the long run because different tests might have slightly different difficulty levels and all that stuff, so this probably evens that playing field. But honestly, I just really like getting a score and knowing exactly how many questions I got wrong. I love just that clarity. But anyway, with that final thought, I'm going to end this video. I'm really glad that I did kind of discover the answer to this big grading mystery and was able to share it with you guys since it is not very clear on their website. Hopefully this video is helpful for you if you're planning on taking this test in the future. And even if you're not, hopefully this kind of wild roller coaster of a video is at least entertaining. And with that, I will see you guys in the next video. And until then, annyeong.